All right, the question here is to evaluate cosine of 75 degrees. Without using a calculator, of course, we want to find the exact value using some formulas or identities. All right, so we can actually do this a couple ways, right? We can, so the first way I'll do this is we'll use the sum formula for sine, or for cosine here. Okay, so we know that cosine of 75 degrees, right? We can actually split this up, right, into two known values that we know. All right, so let's pick 45 and 30. All right, but if you notice, there is a sum formula for cosine, right? The cosine of A plus B is equal to the cosine of A times the cosine of B minus the sine of A times the sine of B. Okay? So remember, this is a formula, right? This is the formula. So this is what we're going to have to plug in, right? The cosine of A, the cosine of B, the sine of A, and the sine of B. Okay. Well, notice what I've done here. Okay, I've sort of aligned these together so that we can figure out that, okay, A is 45 degrees, right? And B is this 30 degrees. So to find the cosine of 75, we need to figure this out, right? Cosine of 45. Okay. So we need the cosine of 45 times the cosine of 30 minus the sine of 45 times the sine of 30. All right, and these values we should know, right? The cosine of 45 is rad 2 over 2. Cosine of 30 is radical 3 over 2. Sine of 45 is rad 2 over 2. And the sine of 30 is 1/2. So now we should be able to multiply these out, right? Radical 6 over 4 minus radical 2 over 4, okay, which does equal radical 6, okay, minus radical 2. These are separate radicals. Okay, I sort of made this one a little bit longer here, right? But these are separate radicals. Radical 6 minus radical 2 all over 4. Right, remember, this is called the exact value because, well, it's not a decimal answer, right? So we found cosine of 75 here using the sum formula. Okay, but we can also find this value using the half angle formula for cosine, right? So we know that the cosine of theta over 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of, now once again, we need the sum formula, the half angle formula for cosine, right? So this is going to be 1 plus cosine of theta over 2. So remember, cosine of 75, right, is equal to the cosine of 150 over 2. So what does that mean? It means that in this formula itself, right, what are we going to plug in? We're going to plug in the cosine of 150, right? Whatever that is, whatever the cosine of 150 is, right? So this is going to equal then, right, plus or minus 1 plus the cosine of 150 over 2. Now, is our answer going to be positive or negative or not? We need to determine that, right? Well, we're finding cosine of 75. 75 degrees in the first quadrant, and in the first quadrant, cosine is positive, right? So our answer here should be a positive. And what is the cosine of 150? Right, the cosine of 150 is radical 3 over 2. Right, so we get square root of 1 minus rad 3 over 2 all over 2. Now we could clean this up just a little bit. Okay, this is a 2 on this denominator, right? So we want to make this one into a 2 over 2. Okay? So that'll give us 2 minus the square root of 3 over 2. And then all of that is still divided by 2, right? And this 2, okay, this is, remember, we're dividing by 2, which is the same as multiplying by 1/2, okay? So that'll make this into a radical 2 minus rad 3 all over 4. And we can split this up again and bring that radical 4 out as a 1/2, right? Because this is in the denominator, and we get 2 minus radical 3. And this, I guess, is the most that we can simplify that. So this will be our answer right here.